Yeah, when I was watching the documentary that recently came out, it's fabulous, by the way, if you haven't checked it out on PBS or on YouTube. But they were mentioning on there that the original Wrestling at the Chase show aired on Saturday nights and Sunday mornings. Is that right?
Well, actually, that was one of the sticklers in the book when the author, Ed Wheatley, friend, his publisher had called me and asked if I would be interested in helping with a coffee table book. And I had originally at first said no. I'd already helped do a Wrestling at the Chase book with my friend Larry Matisek, 18 years ago it was. And they said, well, would you at least talk to Mr. Wheatley and let him show you what he's got? This is a coffee style book, where Larry's was more of a paperback book in his life of working with Sam Muchnick and what it was like. And it was a great book. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. A lot of great stories, everything factual in it. So I met with Mr. Wheatley and he had always been known for writing baseball books and sports books. And
Yeah.
so he came over, met with me, he brought me some samples of his books, and I just fell in love with the quality of his book. It's a real heavy paper, hardbound book.
Yeah.
And this is what they call a coffee table book, just loaded full of photos. And so he had convinced me right away after a couple of meetings that and then when he saw my collection of photos and memorabilia that I've collected over 50 years now almost, he knew that there was a lot of a good that could come out of our relationship.
Sure.
And so the book is, it took off from there. But one of the sticklers in that book is the same thing you said. People always told him in his review, wrestling was taped on Saturday, rebroadcast on Sunday. But I said, well, Ed, I go back a little farther than that. I remember when it was on Wednesday night. And he called me back and said, Herb, I cannot document that anywhere. And I said, well, I got a tape from 1962 when Joe Garagiola. I don't know if you remember that name, but he was the first play-by-play announcer of Wrestling at the Chase in 1959. And then he went on later on. He played a little for the St. Louis Cardinals. And then he went on to the Today Show in New York and hosted that for many years.
Yeah.
So I got him the tape, and clearly on the tape, it's back then they had the slate that they had up on there, take one, when the drum roll would come on, and Anheuser-Busch was the sponsor back then, which is still my sponsor to this day, makes my posters for me. It says on there where Joe Garagiola and Wrestling at the Chase every Wednesday night and Saturday. And so when I showed Ed that, he said, well, that sums it up for me. So you had to be a little bit older to know that it was on actually on Wednesday nights. And the same way was when it first came, it was on Channel 5, KSDK for a year or so before it ended up on KPLR TV Channel 11. And like I said, it was just things like that I was able to solidify for him that helped make more. In fact, I don't know if I'm going to try to hold this up here if you can see this.
Oh, wow.
This is in the book. It's got KPLR TV Channel 11.
Unbelievable.
But then on the other side, if you turn it around, it's got Wrestling at the Chase, a bear, and it's got the number 44 amid one with his guest. And Sam would give these away.
Awesome.
Sam would give these away to his VIPs. And of course, we took this, and if you get the book, you'll see that this is the one that's in the book as a copy of it. So I carry that as my keychain. But that's
so cool.
I don't know if anybody else has got one of them right now. If there's somebody out there, I'd be curious to see what number they are. This has got a number 44 on it. I've been told that the number 44, I haven't confirmed it yet, but the number 44 was issued to Luthez. One of the all-time greats. So
definitely one of the legends.
Trying to run that down. So but right now it's Herb Simmons because it's in my pocket.
and this is in the new book, right? The one that came out recently.
It's in a new book, Ed Wheatley's book, and the one that he did the documentary. In fact, when we were writing the book, he starts talking about Herb. He says, I've won some Emmys with my St. Louis Browns book. And he said, I think we've got a hit here. And he says, I think because St. Louis was the home of professional wrestling. He said, I think we can do a documentary. And he says, I think it will go over. So as he's finishing the book up, and I set him up with a lot of the interviews in it that he did in the book, and then the more he started talking about the PBS Channel 9 wanting to do it, I said, well, yeah, I'll help out with it, and again we did, and people are still talking about it, and
Yeah, it's booming. Look at it. It's got so much coverage. I mean, it's
yeah,
crazy.
it's as I said, wrestling in St. Louis was the hub. People like Ric Flair, Dick the Bruiser, Gene Kaniski, the Von Erichs, everybody that you could talk to always said, you never made it to the big times until you made it to St. Louis at the
Mm.
Coruscant Room at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. A lot of those guys were used to wrestling in barns and little nightclubs and stuff like back in the day, or some of them in some coliseums. But in St. Louis, here you had this big hotel, the Chase Park Plaza, where queens and kings stayed at, and
Hmm.
movie stars, Frank Sinatra, people like that. Uh, and then here down the hallway in the Coruscant Room, you have wrestling at the Chase, where Dick the Bruiser, Farmer Marlin, and Fritz von Erich, and people like that in there in a smoke-filled room with a wrestling ring. And so, I mean, and that went on from 1959 till right at 1983.